Thank you very much for the invitation. So let's see. Will I be able to, see it down here. Okay. So I don't have a disclosure slide, but this sort of represents that. As was mentioned, I'm a statistician. I don't work in the area of oncology, and I also don't do a lot of research in clinical trials. I have been trained in clinical trials, and I've also spent a lot of time working with a wide variety of researchers at Purdue. So if you think about the word data as an acronym, it basically has everything that is important in working with information. There's the design or collection, the D for design, collection of the data. There's the A&T, the analysis and testing. And then the last A is the articulation. And that is one area that I think is often overlooked or not emphasized enough. And it leads to better communication, allows for more information, and will result in more interest and more involvement later on. So I have as my one caveat here, I work in an academic institution in which the consulting service that I direct only works with those associated with Purdue. So as a result, I am primarily talking with the scientific or academic community. I don't get out there and talk with those who will actually be impacted by the research that we find. It's not moving. No. Oh, I think it just did.
Okay, so it's this one, this gray one.
Yeah. And then back? The red?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So to talk a little bit about the Statistical Consulting Service, this is something that really allows us at Purdue to teach the students the soft skills of collaboration. And I just list some of the things that are important there. And in many ways, this is our one source in our programs that focuses on enhancing communication and strengthening collaboration. And in many ways, I think that's a fault of our institution as well as many others, is that there is not enough emphasis placed on relaying the information that is discovered from data. And the other thing is, because again, we're an academic institution, the students really aren't going beyond trying to make sure they relay the information to the academic client. And so I think these experiences that I see in our consultant service are very similar to elsewhere, and so I just wanted to point out a couple of those. One thing that I see far too often in terms of relaying information is this focus on statistical significance. We have clients who will literally come to us with a problem and say, I have this and I want to show it's statistically significant. And we have to work with them to try to figure out how to take what they're really interested, what is an important effect, and then designing and making sure we can detect that if it exists. You will also see our consultants kind of end their involvement with the client, just saying, well, these things were found statistically significant. Now you go off and make sense of that, and we'll move on to another project. The other thing that I often see happening is that the client and the consultant will often lose focus of what the goals of the experiment are. From the client side, what I see often is a focus on this paper was published, it's somewhat related to mine, so I want to follow exactly what is done in that study without really thinking about how the subtleties between that and the project that they're working on. And then from the consultant side, I often see them focusing or honing down on one particular question far too much. And so instead of seeing the forest through the trees, they're just focusing on this one tree. And then the other thing that has come up with the machine learning and the increase in computation is that there's more and more of a belief that all of these advanced analytic tools will be able to take care of design issues or poor data collection and things like that. And that is just not true. So I was, the things that I emphasize are paying attention to your audience and recognizing what is the audience that you are trying to reach, and how you relate the information is going to depend on who that audience is. I tell our consultants, you really need to spend some time understanding the research area. And it helps them talk the talk and also helps them better relate what is, or moving from statistical to practical significance. One thing that really helps there is if the client also is willing to share and help educate the consultant in terms of the material. And then finally, to always think about alternative ways to present results or talk about the results. Is the standard scatter plot really the best way to get across what you want to do? Think about alternatives. And I think that's really important, and that gets into the whole idea of translational statistics. And so I was really fortunate to have had as a mentor, and unfortunately he passed away about 2 years ago, George McCabe, who was a pioneer in this area of translational research. And so I list a couple papers here that he has on the subject. He also, he and I co-authored a textbook in which we spent a lot of time trying to relay the ideas of going from collection of data to the articulation of the results. So what I'm going to do here, at the risk of maybe just repeating what you guys already know, although maybe you all know, but out there, maybe not, just some examples of things that I think are really important to get across when you are trying to relay your information. So the first thing is always be clear and concise and use plain language. And an example of that I see when I was working with the IRB is the consent forms. There were certain wording that you were supposed to use, a level of I guess English that you were to not go above, and to avoid talking about probabilities. Express those probabilities in terms of everyday events or other kinds of events that individuals can understand. And so I give you an example there of a DEXA SAN. Also, if you're talking about a slope or a hazard rate or something like that, spend a little time actually describing what that means in terms, in words that they will understand. And then finally, think about alternative ways of relaying the findings that you have. And so I don't expect you have time to read this, but this was a study that was looking at the trade-off between calcium retention and salt in your diet. And there was either a way of presenting that you need to cut down your salt a certain amount, or you could equivalently increase your calcium. Well, taking salt out of your diet is often rather difficult. Increasing calcium may be not so difficult. And so then they decided to present the idea of increasing calcium in terms of glasses of milk and consumption of other foods. And I think that is much more applicable to the client. When discussing probabilities, remember odds and odds ratios are often misunderstood. And if you are going to present risks or odds ratios, they really don't have much meaning unless there is a baseline probability associated with them. And then the last comment I have there is you can also use diagrams, little tree diagrams or branch diagrams, to kind of show what these probabilities actually would mean in terms of people. So you could start off with 100, and then they break up and so forth, go down the tree. And so I just have an example of one of those right up there at the top of you have two treatments, and if you had the probabilities either being quite rare or are quite frequent, the relative risk doesn't make a difference. There is a difference in terms of the odds ratio, and there's a huge difference in terms of the change in the actual risk. When presenting time to event data, oftentimes the median survival time is used. That isn't maybe as interesting or impactful to a user or someone who has cancer as maybe the mean residual life. And so you can talk about things in terms of that, and you could actually put a prediction interval around that so that you could talk about this particular person, if they go on this drug, has this mean residual life left. When presenting Kaplan-Meier curves, oftentimes you will see those curves also have confidence intervals around them. And once you start adding confidence intervals, it gets really confusing. And so this idea here was taking the sample size and kind of fading the curve so you're not focusing so much at the later ends when there's not as much data as you have early on. And then also consider graphical tools when you're presenting the results. This paper from 2019 created a little web app, or our Shiny app, that allowed you to put in various covariates that were related to a particular subject that would then come back and present a prediction interval in terms of the increase. And I can't remember what they were exactly studying there. But that is, again, something that is more individual and hopefully more of interest to the users eventually. So in summary, I just wanted to say that many of the communication issues come down to either on one side the failure of us to recognize the struggles to understand the model or the results of that model, and also understanding what other kinds of things that model could say. And so when you are working with statisticians, various projects, ask if there are other ways, or suggest, hey, it would be great if I could say this, and see if that is maybe a possibility. I think it would be really valuable, and again, since I'm not in this, maybe this is already being done, to get users of the research involved in the presentation of the results, or get them involved in the clinical trials. So you could have focus groups on the approaches to present the results and get their opinions, and then utilize those opinions to develop better ways of relating those results. I also, if you think about when you're trying to design an experiment, you usually think about the analytic model so that you can figure out the appropriate sample size. Along those same lines, if you're using individuals here to help you understand how to best present the materials, that should also be done at the beginning. And so when you're working on developing the recruitment material and everything like that, you should be getting feedback from them as well. And then I just wanted to finish on one thing that we've started to do at the consulting service, and maybe it's already being done here, but we had some discussion already of the powers of LLMs. So what we have done, given the open source, is we've created our own little open source LLM where we've taken all of the applications that people have submitted over the last 5-10 years and all of the reports that we put together and our findings from those things, and created an LLM now where we can submit a application and out will come a report of what type of design is likely, what additional questions are needed in order to do the analysis, and so forth. I think in the area of presenting and relaying information to users, having such an LLM could be very helpful, and this is something that could be built up. So with that, I will stop. Thank you.